Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Thriving Adoptees podcast. Today, we've got Sally as a guest today, Sally Verstraete. See, I knew I was going to fluff it. It's a Belgian or a Dutch name.
Yes. Yeah. I think the roots really go back to it being Belgian. Yeah. But my husband's family also has some connections to the Dutch. Yes.
Yeah. And it means from the street.
It does mean from the street. Yes.
Which has some sort of significance, right? Like
very much so.
Almost. Yeah.
Well, thank you for having me on here. First of all, Simon, I really feel honored to be here. And yes, from the street, when my husband and I were dating, and he told me, well, I shared a little bit of my story with him, my relinquishment adoption story with him, and he told me that the name Verstraete means from the street. And that's really significant for me because my relinquishment adoption story starts with being found on a street all by myself in a district of Seoul. That's the story I was always told. A passerby found me. I was crying. I was all alone. And the passerby found me and took me to a police station. So yeah, that was, I remember when he told me that and just the chills I experienced at that moment.
Yeah. I'm getting those chills too.
Are you? Yeah.
So I'm getting goosebumps on my arm.
Yeah, I can see that.
One of the things I ponder a lot and do mention on quite a lot of episodes, because I think it's a really big thing to ponder, is you were crying, right? You were crying and alone, and there's this visceral emotional experience and crying at the loss, right?
Yes.
Our birth mothers, and somehow the $60 million question for me is how that, which has no thought or concept, it's a pure experience, it's a pure feeling thing, how that becomes something that is a subconscious or conscious belief of not being good enough. So how can a visceral emotion becomes a belief?
Right.
And that is, for me, the $60 million question. And we have to find our own kind of way to that, because it seems to me there's a degree of thought involved in that.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
And to use a posh word, cognition, I think, because you're as well as being an adoptee, you're a therapist. So this cognition word kind of seems to be a bit more grand than me saying it involves some thought.
Yes. Yeah. Well, we try to understand, we try to make meaning out of those experiences. We ask the question, why? Why was I crying? Why was I all alone? Probably more the why was I all alone? And when we try to understand that, when we try to answer that, is when we come up with these beliefs, when we try to make meaning out of that, we come up with these beliefs or these burdens that we carry for the rest of our lives, that I wasn't good enough. I remember when I went back to Korea in 2004, we went to the place, the address that's on my adoption papers, the address that says that's where I was found. And I didn't notice this, but my sister who was with me noticed that there was a bag of trash sitting outside the door at this address. And she really wanted to move that bag of trash because she didn't want me to compare myself that 4-year-old little girl who had been standing in that spot to that bag of trash as something that somebody left out or put out, discarded, right? As if there was something wrong with me. And I remember after that trip and processing and connecting with the feelings and saying something like that, yeah, I remember journaling, were my birth parents done with me, so to speak? Were they done with me? Was I broken enough that they said, we don't want her anymore? Because the story also includes that I had epilepsy when I was found. So, right, that's where I get that question of, was I broken? Was I too much to handle, that my parents couldn't handle my medical needs? Now, it could be, the compassionate answer would be, maybe I did have medical needs and they wanted me to get some help. But in that moment of asking the why and not being sure, that did cross my mind. Yeah, was I broken enough that they said no more?
Sarah, I just wanted to say, you're thousands of miles away from me, right?
Yes.
And you're also, the picture of you, the image of you on the screen is about 12 inches away.
Yes.
Yeah. But yes. I want to send you a big hug.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I feel that.
Yeah. Now my goosebumps are going, and now my eyes are filling up, right? Because that picture is just so loaded, isn't it? I mean, it's loaded just for me hearing about it. So what it is like for you, you know, like God only knows. It's so loaded for me that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is loaded. It is loaded. Yeah. Even every time in telling that story, I feel it. I feel it in my body. I feel it. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. That there's always that question. There's always that sense of, I think the feeling has changed over the years for more compassion for that younger version of me. And for the me who questioned it after I went back to Korea, the me who asked those questions, were they done with me? Was I broken enough for them to put me out on the street? Yeah, I think that feeling now is more compassion. But yeah, there's the feeling of, even as preparing for this morning, needing to put aside that question of, am I good enough? Am I good enough to do this? Is my story good enough? Am I worthy enough to do this? Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, thanks.
It's a short answer.
Yes, thank you.
So something came up for me looking at the notes from last time we spoke, and I had a potential idea for our conversation today, and I know that you've got an idea that you mentioned as well. So we'll see if where your suggestion and my instinct was, we'll see if they overlap, right? And if they don't, then I'll bring in my idea as well.
Yeah.
Because it for me it goes to the very roots of the stuff that you've just been talking about.
Yes. Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah. So you were chatting to somebody over the weekend, and you've been journaling, looking at this topic of the importance of our memories.
Yes.
So why did this land for you, Sally, do you think? Or can you tell us a little bit more about that?
So memories, I think, in my conversation with her, I was questioning, do I have a story to tell? because I don't have a lot of memories from my childhood. People ask me since I was 5 when I was adopted, usually the follow-up question is, do you remember anything? And no, I don't. I don't remember anything. My answer is always no, I don't remember anything. I think that I had to start all over. So my brain said, you need to forget all of this. And because it's not going to help you. And in order to survive, you need to forget all of it and you need to start all over. And so that's part of my answer. And then I also answer with also the trauma of it. And trauma can cause some disruption in memory. And then also I add, I think those memories are in Korean, and I didn't have anyone to reinforce any memories I might have had with stories. We can tell stories. I can tell my kids stories about when they were 5 and younger, and that might reinforce any memories that they think they have. But I had no one to tell me those stories, so no one to reinforce any memories they might have had. Plus, they're in a totally different language. So no, I don't remember. So that's why we had this conversation, because I was saying, I don't remember a lot. And even after adoption, I don't have a lot of memories from childhood. Again, more trauma. So she asked me that question, how important are memories to you? And when I was able to spend some time reflecting on that, I thought, well, they're very important, because to me, memories would help me know that I existed, that I didn't start existing in the world as an orphan. That's what I believed for years, because that's the only evidence I had of my existence was as an orphan. I had a couple of pictures that had been taken at orphanages where I stayed, and nothing before that. So my existence, I came into the world as an orphan. So I think memory for me has a lot to do with existence and identity. You know, if you don't exist, or if you don't have pieces of your past, then how do you know who you are? How do you know where you come from? How do you know significance? If you think about cultures that do a lot of storytelling and they're passing on to the next generations through that storytelling, that includes memories. And I don't have that. I don't have that kind of heritage or those connections to tell me who I am or where I belong. It has to do with belonging and being in connection with others.
The image or the metaphor that you shared when we spoke last time was that of a balloon, and you felt you said that you felt untethered. You felt that you were floating like a balloon,
Yeah.
I guess, at the mercy of the, you know, wherever the winds take you, and
Right.
and there's that. Have you read that book, actually, The Untethered Soul by
I haven't
the
yet.
singer?
No.
Yeah, I listened to it on audio and a couple of other ones of his books. There's some good stuff in it. I wouldn't say he was one of my top authors, but it's got some, yeah, that image of an untethered balloon, an untethered soul, without grounding. I think, lacking grounding. So yeah.
I had a couple other images this past weekend in thinking about not having memories. I was seeing an image of me standing on a cliff or hill or something, looking into space, because there was no bridge. There was no bridge to, and I wasn't even sure if I could even see the other side, because without memories, I have nothing to give me visual images in my mind. So me looking backwards at something, but not being able to really see anything and not being able to get there because there is no bridge to get there. And I was thinking about that because I recently got results from another DNA test that I did at a conference recently in June. And again, it showed me that my closest relative is a third cousin. So I don't have the connection to birth family. I don't have that bridge to memories or past, anything like that. So that was another image I had. Another image was when I was with some people yesterday, and someone used the word when she said, I'm hoping that, you won't attach to any ideas or expectations. And that word attach is so significant for adoptees. And I was thinking about that. Yeah, this sense of swinging back and forth between trying to be attached and not feeling attached. And just how we spend our lives swinging back and forth between those two. Being attached, do we have a sense of attachment, and also not feeling any sense of attachment?
Yeah. So it's strange you use the word cliff. I remember a first date with a girl back in the early 90s, late 80s. And she said, I feel I'm falling off a cliff. What she meant was she was falling in love with me, but I didn't get that at the time, right? And so when the thing that came into my mind, listening to your story, was that of a vortex, because once our brains start down this path,
right,
and you've had this picture, you painted this picture in your mind of going back to the address where you were found. There's this garbage bag, and once we're on that downward spiral, that vortex, we're just going to keep on going,
right,
down and down, and we're going to go into a flat spin, and it doesn't feel like we're ever going to come out of that spin. Like a flat spin. The guys, when pilots are learning to fly, they intentionally, the trainer will intentionally put them into a flat spin so that they learn how to get out of it if it happens in real life. So they have to put themselves in danger, but they're doing it. I guess there's dual controls, and they can take back over the plane, and they're doing it at a very high level, so that there's plenty of high altitude. So there's plenty of time for the instructor to intervene, and without them falling to earth, right?
Yeah.
As I was thinking about this vortex, and this floating balloon, this untethered soul who, was left at 4. I was just thinking, and yet here you are.
Yeah.
So what's had you back to get you here? Given that the desperate circumstances, like that, a desperate 4-year-old being left on their own, right? The nearest I got, I can get to that experience is we start school younger in the UK than you guys do in the US. We start at 4. So I do remember like being left by my mum, my adopted mum, at school, and being very upset on that first day, right? So that's the closest kind of memory I've got to that. But some things got you from there to here.
Sure.
How's that?
That's a good question. And that's a really powerful image, the image of being in a flat spin. And I think that we as adoptees definitely feel it sometimes in moments in our lives as if we are in that flat spin and scared that we're going to crash. I know that I have been there in my life. So how did I get here? It's that image of an instructor being with you. We could probably say that all the people in my life, the passerby, the story is that the passerby could have been that instructor. The police, the passerby brought me to a police station. So then the police brought me to a Red Cross shelter. That was an emergency shelter for lost and abandoned children. So it could be all the Red Cross shelter workers. And then from there, I was moved to another orphanage for about a month. So it could be those people. And then after that, I went to another orphanage for a couple months, and that one was run by some nuns. And so it could be those people could have been the instructors in my life. And then I was moved to another orphanage after that. I think it was the Holt International Adoption Agency orphanage, because that's where I was adopted from. And that was my last place before I was adopted. So I think it could be, all the different people in our lives, and especially my therapist who helped me really understand and who stayed with me during that flat spin. Ron Neidham, he's written some books that have to do with relinquishment and adoption, and he's a therapist, and he really helped me. And he was a very significant instructor, co-pilot, whatever you want to call it, in that image, who helped me get through that.
Yeah.
And who helped me be brave enough to even get high enough and to get into the plane and get high enough so that I could see my story and feel it and let it be told from all parts of me.
Yeah. Something came to, I've heard this from a mentor, coach, therapist type person that I've worked with. I would say, she wouldn't call herself I don't know what she calls herself. Anyway, I was kind of by the by. I don't know why I'm going down that cul-de-sac there. I think it was Einstein. She told me this. Einstein said the most profound question we can ask ourselves is the world, has the world got our back? Is the world a friendly or an unfriendly place? Something along those lines. And we've got the birth mum, we've got your mum, your birth mum, your biological mother. We've got her on one hand, and then we've got all these other people who have had your back.
Right. Family, friends.
Yeah. And so the world has been on your side. Mostly.
Not everyone. Not everyone. But yes, yeah, there have been a lot of people who have been on my side, and I appreciate them, and they have helped me during those flat spin times.
Yeah. So it kind of leads into the thought I had about what we might talk about before I asked you. So I wanted to go with what you want first, right? Because it's going to be more. Your choice. It's going to be a richer conversation. If you're starting off the topic rather than me. what I thought was something that you shared with me last time. So I think, and it's got a very, for me, it's really profound, because it's about the stuff that it's about us people, us adoptees, taking stuff personally, right? So when you talked about the epilepsy, a metaphor flipped into my mind, and it was when I worked in a coffee factory, and I worked on this in Berlin, and I worked on this packing line, and there was before the packets of coffee were put into the box to be shipped to the retailer or the wholesaler or whatever, they were tested to make sure that the vacuum was correct, the vacuum was intact, and if the vacuum had gone somehow, then this little fist, a little metal thing came out, and it knocked the packet of coffee off the conveyor belt, right? So that it could be repackaged. And that, for me, that's the metaphor for me that I had for rejection. Yeah, it's substandard, the back, yeah. That and when I learned the story, because that's how I felt. But before I knew the full story about my adoption, and once I learned the full story, I didn't feel rejected anymore. And one of the big parts to my adoption story was the cultural thing at the time, which were basically single mothers had loads of stigma, and you couldn't do it. Right? It was your shame on the family. So that was the context. It was about the family shame, not about me being substandard.
Right.
And as a similar dynamic going on in South Korea, so you are biracial in South Korean culture, is that right?
No, that was my sister.
That was your sister. Sorry. But the culture of the time often leads to us being adopted. So it's not personal. It's cultural.
Yeah, I'd agree with you that it probably isn't personal. It's hard to not personalize it when you don't have any. You found out.
Totally.
You got some answers to that why.
Yeah.
I will never get those answers.
No.
So I have to tell myself intellectually it wasn't that I was broken enough for my birth parents to say they're done with me. I have to tell myself there was some other reason, whether that was because I had medical needs that they couldn't afford. I mean, in trying to understand it without personalizing it, I tried to think about Korea at that time. And it was 1974 is when I was adopted, 1973 when I was found on a street by myself. So it had been almost 20 years since the end of the war, but still, Korea probably, and for definitely parts of it, were not thriving yet. And that's what I tell myself. I think that's how I've tried to intellectually answer that question, by trying to put it in some historical context. But who knows? I don't know, but I will never know. So there will still be a piece of that. Was it because?
Yeah. So as you say that, my mind is going, well, there's something deep here. There's something deeper here than that intellectual knowing, it sounds like to me.
And that's interesting. What are you sensing? Can you speak more to that?
Yeah. Can I speak more to that? I can only speak more to it by sharing my philosophy, not answering your question, not kind of answer your question.
May I ask you a question first?
Go for it.
Yeah, because I mean, in therapy, we talk about a knowing. There is a knowing without the cognitive knowing. There is a deeper knowing. There's a physical sense. We try to return people to noticing physical sensations. Sometimes we'll, like in internal family system work, we'll take them into a space where maybe they will have some images, sensations that might be their knowing. Is that what you're suggesting, that there's that kind of knowing?
Yes, I think we're on the same grounds, on the same lines. So somebody mentioned internal family systems to me a couple of weeks ago, and somebody's mentioned it to me before, and I read, I bought an audio book by the guy that created IFS, whose name is Robert Knight, is it, or Bob Knight, or
Richard Schwartz.
Richard Schwartz, yeah. I got Richard for Rob. I don't know. Yeah, Dick Schwartz. Yeah, Dick Schwartz. I knew it was a nickname.
Okay.
And I got what I needed from listening to the first 20 minutes of it.
Yeah.
And then looking at the title of the book. So do you remember the title of the book? Have you read this book?
No Bad Parts?
Yeah.
Yes.
So no bad parts for me equals every part is good.
Yes.
Equals the logo of the Thriving Adoptees podcast. I changed it a while ago, and I changed it to a diamond.
Yes. Yeah.
So whatever's happened to us,
yes,
we are that diamond. There are no parts to us. It's the trauma obscures or veils the diamond.
Yes. Yes.
And internal family systems is quite spiritual.
Yes.
It's not psychological. So what we're looking at here is our infinite value.
Yes.
So every metaphor runs out of steam. Where the diamond runs out of steam is that there's a market price for a diamond. Yeah, so it's set by others.
Yes.
And there's a price value on it.
Just like for adoptees.
Sorry?
Just like for adoptees.
Just like for adoptees. So when I first saw a price list for adoptees, I almost felt sick.
It is sickening.
And the diamond metaphor runs out because I see our value as infinite.
Yes.
You can't put a price on it. I'm sure you can't put a price on your kids. The life
Right.
insurance, your life insurance people can put a price on us. But, you know, like, but so the diamond metaphor has its strengths and its weaknesses in it, but it runs out. Its value is finite.
Yes.
The diamond's value is finite. Our value is infinite.
Yes.
So, pardon the word that I'm going to use in a minute. On one hand, we've got, you know, you were referring to this intellectual knowing. On the, so that you've got like, you're trying to tell yourself something, like we're trying to tell ourselves stuff, and that never works, right?
No.
Because our felt experience trumps, that's the word I didn't want to use, right? Our felt experience trumps always our theoretical constructs that we have.
Mm-hmm.
So until we see our infinite value for ourselves, then we're going to need to kind of shore up our self-esteem.
Yes.
Within the intellect, but the intellect's that we're on shaky ground, and that's, we're untethered. We don't have grounding, so this all seems to kind of sit in for me. But I think I might be talking too much. So.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of what you said makes sense, and I would agree that part of my healing was being able to have a felt sense of that value, to not only see it, but experience it, and to have that deeper knowing that no matter what the story is behind why I ended up on that street all by myself alone and crying, I have that value. I have that worth. Yes. Yeah. I would agree. And I remember hearing you talking to the same person I talked to on Saturday, and you wanting to hear the healing part of adoptee stories. And I think that has been part of my healing, is being able to have that felt sense of worth, of value.
I agree, totally, 100%. What other things would you bring into the mix? You said a felt sense of our own value is a key part of our healing. So if it's a key part of our healing, what other parts would you see in as making as the constituent parts of our healing?
For me, it was having some empathy for those younger parts of me, so my story, right, I said before that my existence was always that I was an orphan because I had pictures of me, shaved head, in old used clothing that I've always thought were, those look like orphan clothes. They just look very sad and worn, and maybe other kids who had been found and brought to the shelter had worn them. And so that's what they gave me when they needed to change my clothes. But then in 2003, when my sister went to Korea, she did a little searching for herself, but also for me. And she was able to go back to the Red Cross shelter, and they had the photo album that stored hundreds of photos of lost and abandoned children. And my picture was in there. But that picture was very different than the ones I had always known, because in that picture, it was taken the day after I was found. I still had hair. It was short, it was cut short, probably to about my ears. And then, but long enough on top that I could have a ponytail right at the top of my head that was, it wasn't sticking straight up, it was lying forward on my head. And I had on a ruffled shirt. So to me, I looked like a little girl in that picture. And a little girl belonged to somebody. A little girl was somebody's daughter. And that was a real turning point for me, that I did actually belong to somebody. I didn't come into the world as an orphan. I did exist as somebody's daughter. And it also helped me start having some empathy for her, and then able to integrate that empathy for myself, because she and I are the same person. We are one. She is a part of me. That helped me have that felt sense of worth, because looking at her, I wouldn't say to her, you have no worth. You have no value. You are not lovable. I wouldn't say that to her. And then going to Korea, I was able to go to a couple of the places. I was able to go back to the Red Cross shelter. I saw that photo in that photo album. And then one of the other places that had the orphanage where I stayed, the first orphanage, they had my records, and they pulled up my records. And again, there were these little black and white pictures, but I looked like an orphan in those pictures because my head was shaved, just in case I had lice. But being and going to the place where I was found, all of that helped me integrate who I was then with who I am now, and have empathy for being there and imagining what I had been through at such a young age. Then I was able to start having some empathy for myself, for that part of me. So that, and that really came out when we were taking off, when we were leaving Korea. I started to cry because I was also imagining that little girl. I could picture her because I had seen those photos. I can now picture her sitting on an airplane, leaving everything that was familiar to her, losing all of that. And I cried and I cried as we were taking off. And I was crying for her. I was crying for me.
I was going to ask you the question about why your head was shaved, but you've answered that. The thing that came through to me as you're expressing that, talking about that, is, and the shaved head is almost like it's a uniformization. What's the word? I'm struggling. It's about seeing you as an individual,
Yes.
rather than an unidentifiable.
Yes.
Like the ponytail, the way you described it, it was long enough to sit down, like you were an individual.
Yes.
So you're an individual rather than one of 40 shaved heads, little boys and girls at 4. You probably there wouldn't it wouldn't be the hair would make everybody even more, shaved heads would make everybody indistinguishable.
Right.
So it's a depersonalization. It's a uniformization. It's the opposite of that kind of self-worth thing.
Right. Right. Yes.
You're a mass. The thing that, I started. So I finished. The thing that came to my mind was people in concentration camps.
Right.
An ultimate dehumanization place.
Right.
And I feel almost kind of guilty saying that.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? Because it is so horrible and visceral, but like the tiny details, like the ruffled shirt.
Right. Yeah, ruffled shirt.
The ruffled shirt.
I probably, maybe I had on a skirt too. Yeah, all of those say something about me as a person. You're right. Yeah.
You're a person, you're an individual.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
and the other thing that came to my mind is, as you were talking about, these were second-hand, third-hand, fourth-hand clothes, right? They just whatever they've got in the shelter or in the orphanage.
Exactly.
Like all that stuff is hand-me-downs.
Right.
Or our beliefs are kind of like hand-me-down beliefs, and yeah, there's no such thing as a second-hand view of our own value. It's a felt experience. We can't. I can't. If I could give every adoptee, I'm sure you're the same with your work with your clients. If you could give every one of your clients a felt sense of their value, you would.
Oh, in a heartbeat, I would. Yes, definitely.
And the only reason that you can't is we have to see our own value for ourselves.
Yeah, we need to experience it ourselves. Yes.
We need to, it's deeper. Yeah, it's deeper than, thank you. Yeah. It's deeper than that. It's deeper than just seeing it. It's, right. So if we've got a kind of levels of getting it.
Yes.
So number one is the kind of intellectual understanding.
Right.
Number two is seeing it, is probably a little bit deeper, seeing it for ourselves. Right. And then probably a bit further along from that is like, you said, a full sense, an embodied sense, a fully experienced sense of our own value. Yes. And if we could bottle that.
Oh, that would be wonderful.
If we could bottle it, and I'm now thinking the other thing that I was, if we could bottle it, that'd be one thing. But we'd have to pay for postage and packing, wouldn't we? Well, if we could put it into an email attachment, right? We could email it to everybody in the world.
Well, that gets away from. I'm going to disagree with you a little bit, because
go for it, yeah.
We want it to be individual, right? Going back to what you were saying about it needs to be individual.
Yeah,
it needs to be specific to the person. So I would love people to be able to bottle it. I would love to be able to bottle it, so that when they're having those moments of doubt, when those previous burdens and beliefs of I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, are trying to make their way into our mind and our day, our moment, that we could get out that bottle and we could smell it, we could pour it over us, we could anoint ourselves with it again, if you want to say, right?
Yeah.
So that we can experience that again. That's what I would like.
Would you like the good news?
Pardon?
Would you like the good news?
Yes.
That's what we're doing here now.
I hope so. Yeah.
Now I'm filling up. Listeners, this is what we're trying to do.
Yes.
This is what we're trying to do. It's what I'm trying to do. Yes. 350, whatever it is, episodes into. Now I've got my goosebumps again, right?
Yeah.
This is why. Yeah, and I can't like 350 episodes. You know, how many? 300. I've done a few on my own, on my Todd, as I would say in the slang. But whatever, 359 episodes. I can't remember. 354 with brilliant people like Sally. So we can't do it on them. But if we could, we would. And I love the way that Sally went in. Like you kind of got to see it. You've got to see it for yourself. You've got to. It's a personalised appearance. So another metaphor that pops into my head is I went to I'm going to a wedding in a couple of weeks, and I've got to put a suit on, right? And I don't really wear suits often these days. But back in the day, I actually had a tailor-made suit. I think it was 200. It was a long time ago, so it was about £150. So maybe $200 sterling in the. So I could probably those days I could get an off the peg suit for maybe £100. I paid 150 for this. So what I'm getting at is I'm taking on your metaphor. I'm saying that this is bespoke. You, dear listener, where what Sally's pointing at is for you to have your bespoke sense of value that's unique to you, unique to your adoption experience, unique to what happened pre-adoption, what the story behind that, behind why the meaning, what the background to our relinquishment, the background to your relinquishment, how things have shaped out for you since the adoption. Yeah, and I mentioned that meaning word. What have you seen around that for yourself, Sally? That the meaning of all this.
Are you asking me? So, David Kessler, who's renowned grief training therapist, he talks about the 6th stage of grief as meaning making, as finding meaning. So are you asking me that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I must have read that on your website today.
Yeah, maybe. So I would agree that, as we were talking about wanting that bottle for each individual, that bottle that never runs out. Yeah, that is part of finding meaning as my 6th stage of grief. Finding meaning that in my work, with adoptees, in my sharing my story, in my friendships, mentorships with adoptees, that we will all experience that knowing, having that felt sense of knowing our value, and that the reason why we were relinquished had nothing to do with that. That no matter what other experiences we've had since then, there is no bad part of you. All those parts of you have value, have worth.
All of that.
Yes.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I was trying to think of how I'd sum that up. Did you go through what you went through, including the healing, including the felt sense of value, so that you could help others to their bespoke sense of value?
No, I don't think that's why I went through it. I went through it because I was hurting. You talk about this vortex. My sister used to talk about a helix image in which we are traveling through this helix and we're returning. So when I talk about healing, it's not a one and done. It's a ongoing work for me. But I did the work because I was hurting, because I was in pain, because I was alone, because I didn't have that sense, that knowing, that felt sense of value, of worth. That's why I did it. But in coming through that and finding meaning in what I went through, then I made the decisions that I did that led me to the work that I do and to the person I am and how I try to be in relationships with others.
Thank you for spelling out where I was putting a shortcut in. I think maybe maybe I was trying to simplify it too much. I'm a simple guy.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah.
So that seems to me to be maybe a place to ask you, is there anything else that you'd like to share? Something else that I've not asked you about, or is it time to bring it in?
There's so much more we could talk about, Simon. So much more. We don't have time for it today. So I think that's probably a good place to end.
Cool. I get a feeling that Sally and I might be having another conversation about this for you listeners maybe on a different topic in a few months. So thank you very much. It's been an absolute delight. We're doing this on a Monday, right?
Yes.
I put a thing out. I put a thing out last Monday. Happy Monday. There's a band called Happy Mondays. I don't know if you've a British band in the 80s, 90s.
Oh no.
They were nuts actually. But yeah, Happy Monday. You know, you got Blue Monday. So this has been a great Monday.
Yes.
Hopefully a great Monday for you.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, thanks, Simon. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for asking such thoughtful questions and for what you're doing with your podcast. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for helping it make it happen. Thank you, listeners, for listening to it. We'll speak to you very soon. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.